Paramount and Skydance have agreed to the terms of a merger with a deal to be announced in the coming days. That's according to CNBC's David Faber, who says that Sherry Redstone still has to sign off on this deal. Joining us right now is Rich Greenfield with LightShed Partners. And Rich, why don't you walk through what we think we know and what we don't know yet about this deal?
Well, I think saying this transaction is going to be announced imminently is a bit cart before horse. I think there's been sort of some form of ruptures occurred between the two sides, and I think it is not clear that this transaction is going to move forward as planned. I think Skydance very much wants this transaction to occur. The Paramount Special Committee, Becky, as you said, has certainly endorsed the current transaction. The key piece has always been, what is National Amusements? What does Sherry Redstone want? And I think there is still, for some reason, I don't know what happened over the last week, but something's happened that has led to friction between the two sides. And I think the Redstone National Amusements group is actively looking for alternatives. Doesn't mean this won't happen, but I do think that it probably is, if it does happen, it may be happening on a slower time frame, because I think they are actively pursuing alternatives despite how much Skydance wants this. And remember, Skydance has sweetened this bid. It's moved from zero cash to shareholders to 20% of the transaction in cash. Now we're up to about 40% in cash. So they've moved the bar pretty dramatically for public shareholders. The problem is you're still getting 60% of your shares meaningfully diluted by the inclusion of the merger.
Yeah, I mean, Sherry Redstone National Amusements may be looking for other suitors, but they've been doing that for a while. Are there viable options out there, you think?
It's not clear. I mean, there's been a lot of press reports and a lot of stories we've heard from talking to people of interest in buying out her stake directly. And Becky, you know, some people would say, oh, it sounds crazy to just, who would want to just buy the National Amusement stake and not buy the whole thing the way Skydance? Remember, they're buying Sherry National Amusement stake, and then they're buying or merging in the rest of Paramount. You'd say, who would want to buy just the Redstone stake? And, well, I think step back and go, there's a lot of people who buy sports teams or buy parts of sports teams. So if you think of it as sort of a trophy asset for $2.5 or $3 billion, are there people that might want to do that? If the Skydance deal is not happening, it's possible. I still think there's probably a good chance Skydance happens, but I don't think it's certain. And I think you're seeing the fact that this thing didn't happen yesterday, today, shows everybody something changed. There is definitely friction on all sides right now.
Look, when you ask me who would want to just buy the National Amusements piece, I would think everybody, because then you get a far lower price to take over effective control of the company. I think the question becomes, can you do that without paying anything to the other shareholders? Are there questions of fairness that come up? Is even the board going to be able to sign off on those issues? I'd love to buy it and only pay for the National Amusements piece, because you're paying a small portion for the majority voting control.
And remember, that was the original idea of Skydance, and then they realized that you can't tax-wise then merge in your studio with Paramount for several years. And so they sort of shifted to this alternative transaction of sort of doing it all at once, needing special committee approval. But I do think that I think National Amusements is eager to figure out, is there somebody who might buy just that stake? And, maybe not even all of it, maybe just a portion of it. I think when you think about who's going to be president, I know you've got Lena Khan coming up at 11:30. She obviously, detests all forms of consolidation. But under a different administration, there might be a lot more potential buyers for these assets. So there's also a school of thought that if you wait, till next year, instead of having effectively, as you're talking about, Becky, one buyer, maybe you'd have a lot more alternatives if you waited. So I don't think this is entirely clear that this plays out the way a lot of the press has reported it.
Yeah, so 5 months to the election, you're saying if you hold off, you have a shot of maybe a more welcoming environment. Although I don't know that would necessarily be the case either. The last Trump administration was not always fond of many of the media deals and mergers that were taking place.
That is a nice way of saying it, Becky. I would agree with that. On the flip side, consolidation, right now, this administration's been hostile towards private equity financial buyers of TV stations. I don't know if that would be the case. I think there might be a much more pro-consolidation stance at the FCC. And so, look, it may not allow, who knows whether Warner Brothers could buy Paramount under that construct, you're right. But could you split off pieces? Would it be easier to consolidate assets? I think a lot could change under another administration. Look, we know that National Amusements wants to raise cash. They know they want to exit this business. The question is over what time frame and to who. There is no doubt in my mind over the next couple of years, they are not going to be the majority owner of these assets. I think the question is just, is the Skydance deal the right deal? And did something change? Meaning, is it significantly less cash to Shari or something happened that has changed their mind? Maybe not permanently, but they're certainly exploring other alternatives to see, like you just said, Becky, could they pull a rabbit out of a hat and find somebody who just wants to buy the national stake at a big premium?
Yeah, rabbit out of a hat may be the nice way of saying that, Rich. Let's very quickly, we had Jeffrey Katzenberg on a little bit ago, and look, he's out of media entirely because he can't figure out where this is headed, what a problem this is. I just wonder, do you see any partner that makes sense from a content and distribution strategy that, hey, this is a fix, this is something that looks better?
Look, the media space is undergoing pretty seismic change. And when you look at the internet, it's traditionally winner take most. I mean, pick your category, but traditionally it's winner take most. And I think that's the sort of the challenge you're seeing is everyone's trying to figure out, can they really be a streaming juggernaut? There's too many players. We need some players to either go away, abandon. I don't think, in consolidation, unfortunately, Becky, at least under the current world, I don't think it's possible. So yes, consolidation would certainly help, and that's traditionally what would happen. That is not possible. And so I think a lot of these companies are going to have to make hard decisions. How long do they persevere, and do they actually, make a hard right turn and make different decisions with their businesses? Like Paramount Plus is a crazy idea right now to continue to be burning $1.5 billion a year on a streaming business that isn't working. These companies need to make big decisions. Obviously, until the M&A process plays out, we don't know when they're going to make those decisions. But I think changing strategies and admitting that this is not what you're good at and focusing on what these companies are good at, which is making content, and stopping trying to be Netflix would be a big step in the right direction.